On the morning of March 15, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar walked into Rome's Senate as one of the most powerful men in the ancient world. He had conquered vast territories, defeated powerful enemies, crossed the Rubicon, and transformed the Roman Republic. But that morning, a group of Roman senators was waiting for him. They were not waiting to honor him. They were waiting to kill him. Within minutes, Caesar would be stabbed repeatedly by men who claimed they were saving the Roman Republic. But instead of saving Rome, they helped destroy the political system they were trying to protect. This is the story of Julius Caesar's assassination, the conspiracy, the betrayal, and the chain of events that changed Rome forever. The man who rose above Rome. Julius Caesar was born into an old Roman family in 100 BCE. His family was aristocratic, but Caesar was not born as the most powerful man in Rome. He had to build his political career. He became a skilled politician, military commander, and public speaker. But Rome itself was changing. The Roman Republic had once been governed through powerful institutions, elected officials, and the Senate. But by Caesar's lifetime, Rome was suffering from political violence, social inequality, military rivalries, and competition between ambitious leaders. Power was increasingly concentrated in the hands of generals who commanded loyal armies. Caesar understood this world better than most, and he knew how to use it. The alliance that made Caesar powerful. Caesar eventually formed a political alliance with two other powerful men, Pompey the Great and Crassus. This informal alliance became known as the First Triumvirate. Together, the three men dominated Roman politics. But the alliance did not last. Crassus died during a military campaign. Pompey's relationship with Caesar deteriorated. Eventually, Rome was left with two enormous political and military powers. Pompey and Caesar. The rivalry became unavoidable. And then Caesar made one of the most famous decisions in Roman history. Crossing the Rubicon, Caesar had been commanding armies in Gaul. His military victories had made him extremely powerful. But Roman law required him to give up his military command before entering Italy. Caesar faced a choice: return to Rome without his army, or cross the Rubicon River with his troops. If he crossed with his army, he would be challenging the authority of the Roman Senate. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon. Civil war followed. Caesar's forces fought the supporters of Pompey. Eventually, Caesar defeated Pompey and became the dominant political figure in Rome. The Republic had survived civil wars before. But Caesar's victory was different. He now possessed enormous personal power, and many senators began to fear what that meant for Rome's future. Dictator for life. Caesar was appointed dictator. At first, some Romans supported him. He introduced reforms. He reorganized debt policies, expanded citizenship, reformed the calendar, and attempted to stabilize Roman government. But Caesar's power continued increasing. Eventually, he was appointed dictator perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity, or dictator for life. This was the moment when many Roman elites became seriously alarmed. Rome had traditionally rejected kingship. The memory of Rome's ancient kings remained deeply unpopular among Republican politicians. So when Caesar received extraordinary honors and appeared increasingly like the supreme ruler of Rome, some senators began asking a terrifying question: was Caesar planning to become king? Whether Caesar actually intended to establish a monarchy remains debated. But his enemies did not need certainty. They only needed fear. The conspiracy. A group of senators began secretly planning Caesar's assassination. Among them were Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus was particularly important because Caesar reportedly had a personal connection with him. Ancient sources portray Brutus as someone who believed that the Republic was more important than any individual. The conspirators believed Caesar had become too powerful. They convinced themselves that killing him was necessary. Their plan was simple. They would attack Caesar during a Senate meeting. The date would be March 15, the famous Ides of March, the final morning. According to ancient accounts, Caesar had received warnings. He may have been told about the conspiracy. He was reportedly given information about a plot against his life. Yet he still went to the Senate. There were also stories of strange omens and warnings. Some ancient writers claimed Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, had experienced disturbing dreams and begged him not to go. But Caesar eventually left home. He entered the city and traveled toward the Senate. Inside, the conspirators were already waiting. Caesar had no idea that some of the men around him were about to become his killers. The attack. The Senate meeting took place in a building known as the Curia of Pompey. The conspirators approached Caesar. One of them reportedly presented a petition. Then the attack began. The first blow was struck. Caesar resisted. Then another senator attacked. And another's. Soon, multiple conspirators were stabbing him. Ancient sources describe Caesar attempting to defend himself. The exact details of his final moments are uncertain. But one fact is clear. Julius Caesar was killed by members of the Roman political elite. According to ancient tradition, he suffered numerous stab wounds. The man who had survived wars, political enemies, and countless military campaigns had been killed inside the political heart of Rome. Did Caesar really say, "Et tu, Brute"? One of the most famous moments in popular culture is Caesar looking at Brutus and saying, "Et tu, Brute." But there is a problem. We do not know that Caesar actually said those words. The famous phrase became popular much later through Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. Ancient historians provide different accounts of Caesar's final words. Some suggest Caesar may have spoken Greek. Others give different versions. So the dramatic phrase we know today is probably better understood as a literary tradition than a certain historical quotation. The real story is already dramatic enough. Caesar was killed by men who claimed to be defending Rome. And they believed the assassination would restore the Republic. They were wronged. The aftermath. The conspirators expected the Roman people to support them. They imagined themselves as liberators. But Rome did not immediately celebrate Caesar's death. Instead, the city became unstable. Caesar had supporters. His soldiers remained loyal. And his death created a dangerous political vacuum. Then came one of the most important figures in the story. Mark Antony. Antony had been one of Caesar's closest allies. After Caesar's death, Antony delivered a funeral speech that helped turn public opinion against the assassins. The Roman people became angry. The conspirators were forced to leave Rome. Instead of restoring the Republic, the assassination had created another civil war. The will of Caesar. Then another surprise emerged. Caesar's will was revealed. He had named his young relative and adopted heir, Gaius Octavius. The young man was only 18, but he now inherited Caesar's name, wealth, and political legacy. He would become known as Octavian. At first, few people could have imagined how important he would become. But Octavian quickly entered the struggle for power. He joined forces with Mark Antony and Lepidus. Together, they formed the Second Triumvirate. The men hunted Caesar's enemies. Brutus and Cassius were eventually defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. The conspirators who had killed Caesar were gone. But Rome's crisis was far from over. The end of the Republic. Octavian and Antony eventually became rivals. Their alliance collapsed. Another civil war followed. Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Antony and Cleopatra later died. Octavian became the undisputed ruler of Rome. But he understood something important. Romans hated the idea of kings. So he did not simply declare himself king. Instead, he maintained the appearance of republican institutions while accumulating enormous power. In 27 BCE, he became known as Augustus. And with Augustus, the Roman Empire began. The Republic had effectively ended. The great irony. This is the greatest irony of Caesar's assassination. The conspirators claimed they were killing Caesar to save the Republic. But their actions helped create the conditions for its final collapse. Caesar's death produced political chaos. The chaos produced civil war. The civil war produced Octavian. And Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The men who stabbed Caesar wanted a Rome governed by senators. Instead, they helped create a Rome ruled by emperors. Their greatest fear became reality. Why was Caesar so dangerous? The answer is complicated. Caesar was not simply a dictator who destroyed everything around him. He was also a reformer. He was a brilliant military commander. He had enormous popular support. And he understood Roman politics. But the concentration of power around one man created a problem. The Roman Republic had been designed around competition between institutions and officials. Caesar's rise challenged that balance. The Senate feared losing its influence. The aristocracy feared losing its privileges. And many Romans feared that Caesar might eventually become king. The assassination was therefore not simply a personal betrayal. It was the result of a much larger struggle over what Rome should become. The man who died, the empire that rose. Julius Caesar never became a Roman emperor. He died before the Roman Empire formally began. Yet his death helped create the political world that followed. His name became a symbol of power. Later Roman rulers adopted titles derived from his name. Caesar eventually became associated with imperial authority. His military campaigns transformed Rome's territories. His political reforms influenced Roman government. And his assassination became one of the most famous political murders in history. More than 2,000 years later, people still debate the same question. Did the conspirators save Rome or destroy it? Perhaps the answer is both. They killed a man they believed had become too powerful. But they could not kill the problems that had made Caesar powerful in the first place. The final moment. On March 15, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar entered the Senate. He was surrounded by politicians. Men he knew. Men he trusted. Men who claimed to serve Rome. Minutes later, he was dead. But his death did not end his influence. It multiplied it. The Republic entered another period of civil war. A young Octavian rose to power. Rome's political system was transformed. And eventually, an empire emerged that would dominate the Mediterranean world for centuries. Caesar's assassins wanted to stop one man from becoming too powerful. Instead, they helped create a system where one ruler could hold even greater power. That is the tragedy of the Ides of March. They killed Caesar, but they could not save the Republic. In the end, the assassination of Julius Caesar was not simply the death of a dictator. It was the death of an old political order, and the beginning of a new one. One man entered the Senate as Rome's most powerful politician. He left it as a corpse. But from his death, an empire would rise. This was the story of Julius Caesar, the assassination that changed Rome forever. This is History Uncovered. If you enjoy uncovering the battles, betrayals, empires, and turning points that shaped our world, subscribe for more historical documentaries.